Hello, welcome back to my channel. If you haven't seen the first part of this two-part video set, this is part 2 of me walking my way back in time through the books that I've finished since my previous reading update. So this is like the middle of March. Today being the 27th of March, so there's a lot of books because it's more than a week. But we're breaking it up so it's not a 2-hour long video. So, yay. And I'm going back in time using my Storygraph log, so I'm not missing the books that I don't have in print. And you get kind of the order in which I read them, so they're kind of connected to what else I was thinking about when I was reading them, and which made a difference for some of them. Like in the previous video, I talked about the 2 books that are set in Poland that, you know, I read them back to back, and so they kind of went together. And there was a lot of talk about food, talk about colonization, and things like that. And so lots of interesting combinations. So more great books in this video, and I'll show you guys some of what I'm currently reading as well, because that may be some of what's finished for the final wrap up for this month at the end of the month. Which is in a couple days, and there will be some reading between now and then. I know there's reading sprints starting in about half an hour from now for me that I will be hanging out in, and I always get some reading finished during those. So at least tonight I'll get some reading done. Tomorrow I'm going to visit Walsenburg and look at some properties. So I won't be doing a lot of reading during the day tomorrow, but in the evening I'll still be doing more reading. And then Sunday I'll probably be going and doing some shopping for fun, because today's my birthday, but I really wasn't up for going anywhere today. I wanted a day off, so today's a day off. And then this weekend I'll be doing all the stuff. I was going to actually go down to Walsenburg today, but the realtor wasn't available today to do anything, so in order to actually see the building that I particularly like, I needed to be doing that tomorrow. So that all, wound up with me staying home and doing BookTube stuff on my birthday, which I don't mind. I like days where I can just hang out at home with the cats. Which we had a cat on their new perch when I started the video. I'm sure I'll get more. I got them a new perch. Angle this down. You can see the circle there. It's a really, really fat central column. I need to rewrap the rope and stabilize it. I'm kind of thinking I might have to take it apart and put some real wood in to anchor everything to, because it seems like maybe where the screws go in, it's kind of not stable anymore, and it's not able to be stable unless I do something to it. But it's a really sturdy piece of cat furniture relative to the normal ones that my bigger cats find really sad. So I volunteered this week at the monthly pet pantry distribution, and afterwards we were sorting through stuff, and we had a few things like this that they're not likely to make it to the distribution because they're really bulky for what we do. And so as a volunteer and helping sort out the stuff, I got to take them home if I wanted them. And so I adopted that, and I adopted this cute little bed thing that has a scratching flat thing instead of a normal bed insert, which Katerina is probably napping on right now. So they got some fun things. Anyway, so let me grab the first stack of books I'm going to talk about in this video, and we'll get started. All right. So the first book I'm going to talk about, I don't have in print. It's Talking Classics by Mary Beard, and this is an arc. It's a nonfiction arc in which Mary Beard, the classicist that has lots of videos on YouTube if you want to check her out, she wrote a book about being a female classicist and about, the role of the classics, as in Latin and Greek stuff, in modern society and in education and stuff. So I'm not sure how convincing it would be if you don't think that the classics are important. I didn't find her arguments particularly persuasive on that front. But if you already think that they're important, then you'll vibe with her book really well. And she has a lot of interesting things to say. And even if you're not totally convinced about why the classics are that important, her perspective on being a classicist as a woman, when she started out, it's really interesting from that perspective, because the classics have predominantly been a male field for a long time. Modern day, there are a lot more women that are studying Latin and Greek and classic history and stuff. But that wasn't always the case. And there still is a bit of elitism about male versus female classicists and which voices are considered to be authoritative on these subjects. And then how much value the subject has as it becomes more female dominated in the field itself. So there is some discussion in this book and just in general about whether the more women get involved, whether that's part of why it's considered less important. And that is a valid observation. There are a lot of things that when they were male-dominant fields, they were considered to be a lot more respectable and important. And as they've become more female-dominated, they're less well-paid, they're considered less important, and it may just be that there's this inherent bias against things that are female-dominant. So there's a lot of discussion points about that line of thought, as well as why the classics are interesting, why they're important, why Mary Beard got involved and kind of how she got involved. So there's a lot to unpack in this book, and it's not very long. I'm not sure if this is a new edition of an older book, but it's an arc that came out in this year. I think comes out. It might have not quite published yet, but I think it has. I'm not really one of those ARC readers that reads them before they're published. Unless it's, some reading project like what I've been doing recently, where I'm just picking them based on the page in the Alley listings that they're on. So some of the ones I'm reading now actually haven't been published yet, but that's rare for me. So anyway, really good, and I definitely recommend looking up Mary Beard on YouTube, because she's a really interesting speaker. And there's some of those things like where they put multiple people in kind of a panel sort of setting on a stage and ask them questions, and they bounce ideas off each other. She's done several things like that are really good. So yeah. Before that, I finished 1968, The Year That Rocked the World by Mark Kurlansky, which might seem familiar to you if you watched my earlier March update, where I finished, what is it called? Looking for a Brand New Beat, which is about the song Brand New Beat. Is that what it's called? Now I've got the song in my head, but is that what it's called? Anyway, it's about a song that became an anthem in the 60s that was sort of a story about how that era became what it was with the civil rights era and the shifting of culture around warfare and youth and where they belong in society. There's all kinds of stuff going on during that time, especially the civil rights era and where Black people in America fit in society. So that was more that book. 1968, we're kind of in the same era. But now we're looking at the year in more than just the United States. So we do get the United States and all the stuff going on during that time in the U.S. with the presidential stuff and the war stuff, and civil rights stuff is still there. But then there's also stuff going on in a lot of other countries. And by the end of the 60s, we're getting into Vietnam and sort of unpopular warfare and presidential stuff that changed a lot of what goes on in the United States since. So the Kennedy election and assassination and then the new president, all that's going on in this era. And a lot of other stuff is going on in other parts of the world in that same time frame. So instead of being about one country's narrative, this is about just a snapshot in time all over the planet. So I like that structure. It puts things in a different perspective, because if you're just following U.S. history in the 60s or French history in the 60s or anything like that, you're not getting what's going on in a broader perspective at that time. So I like this structure. I'm definitely going to keep an eye out for similar books. I have some actually on my 26 from 26 list for my nonfiction that I think are similar. So I'll be reading more for sure. But it made me kind of think about, so if this year was so interesting, would the following year be as interesting? Or, the end of the decade? Whatever year you choose, which years are going to give you the same sort of depth of storytelling? And are there years that are not that interesting? So that'll be something I'll have to do more reading to find out. Anyway, I enjoyed it. I always like Mark Kurlansky's writing. It's probably not my favorite still. My favorite probably is still Salt, which is a history of the world from the perspective of salt. I highly recommend it. And then my second favorite Kurlansky book is still probably Paper, Paging Through History, which is about the history of the world from the perspective of paper. So I am working my way through the rest of his books, though, and this one's pretty good. So anyway, let's move on to the next one. So the next book I finished was Stag Dance, A Novel and Stories by Tori Peters. This one is LGBTQIA+, or as I like to abbreviate it when I'm typing things, LGBTQ+, because the plus was supposed to do all the other stuff. That's the plus part. So we don't have to keep making it longer. And for the record, I fall in that plus end. I'm in the A part when you make it longer. But it's just getting longer and longer. And oh my gosh, I don't need to actually be represented in the letter itself. It could just be in the plus. I am okay with that. I don't feel a lack of representation if I fall in the plus part. That's okay. But this book falls in the LG and T part, mostly. There might be some B. It's got a lot of stuff in it, anyway. So if you want representation for more than one flavor of queerness slash gayness slash trans bi, whatever. It's in here, probably. Not A. It's one of those things. B in the A part. Oh my gosh, I don't need all the spicy stuff on page. I'm not into it. I don't want to read it. It's all equally like bodily fluids and touching parts that don't need to be. Yeah. Anyway, so I am not represented in this book. Just saying. But most people in the LGBTQIA plus spectrum are in here somewhere. It's good. I enjoyed the variety of stories and the variety of expressions of human sexuality in this book. It's definitely a lot more variety than most books cover, so that's great. And it's one to keep in mind if you're looking for books to read in June, because Koda, your booktube bestie Koda, Koda means friend, that Koda, he is putting together a new readathon in June for Pride Month. And I will be talking about his readathon more as he gets to the point of actually having an announcement video. We're still early days right now. If you're a content creator who's doing sprints and that kind of stuff and might be interested in being involved in this readathon and hadn't heard about it already, he has put the call out for people who want to be sprint hosts for this event. So if you are familiar with Koda and should be involved in this thing and haven't noticed yet, you should probably talk to Koda, because it's being spun up now. It is time to contact the Koda if you want to be involved in this thing. I don't know where I'm going to be in June as far as the whole bookstore project thing. Obviously, if I'm looking at buildings tomorrow, I don't know how long it's going to take to get the funding to be able to finance this project. That is going to be the one thing that's going to take the most time. I think we already know where we want to land as far as buildings. If the one we're going to look at in particular tomorrow is what we think it is, then it's just a matter of getting the funding to be able to get it. So we're close enough that I may be in the new space by June. But I don't know what our internet situation is going to look at. Like, I am not committing to anything that requires me to be on a screen with other people in June. Because I have no idea if I'll have the internet to be able to sustain a sprint. So, we'll find out. But if I'm online, I will at least be in the chat for it. And I'm pretty sure Tara is happening this year in June. So I'll at least be trying to participate in that, even if it's just, with whatever internet we have by then. We'll have to see how things go. I may even still be where I'm at now in June. It really just depends on how financing works for us in this process. So anyway, but yeah, this would be a great book for that readathon event. Just saying. So Stag Dance by Tori Peters. Put it on your TBR for June if you haven't read it yet. It will be great for that. And let's see if I have anything else that works for that readathon. Yeah, I think that's the best option I have for this video for that readathon. So let's move on to the next book I finished. Blood of Elves by Andrzej Sapkowski. And this is another thing where you will want to be following Koda if you are interested in reading along in this series. This is the Witcher series, because he is hosting the read-along for this along with Nicole at Dusty Book Sniffers. So this is for their Seriously series reading project, and they have a lot of social media for it, and they do sprints, and it's fun. It's not too grueling reading pace because they tend to get behind. They're very busy people. So if you haven't caught up yet to, like, this is book one. They read the 2 short story collections first, and then this, and then I need to get book 2. I don't own it in print, so that one I might have to get from the library. So I won't even be starting it till next month because I ran out of checkouts. So that's kind of where we're at in the read along. I'm not behind. I don't know if we're starting book 2. I don't have it, so I won't start it till next week anyway. But that's kind of where you need to be to join in without having to catch up. But it's pretty casual. You can catch up still if you want to. So I will put Koda's channel in the description. Be sure to be subscribed to him so that you can get updates for the June LGBTQIA plus readathon and for the read-along for the Witcher series, which I'm enjoying. 4.5 stars for this one. It's not something where I feel like I must read the next book now. So there have been fantasy series I was more into, but I am enjoying it. And then I also have a few other books that I've finished that I know that I finished them, but I need to see what I did to their records on Storygraph, that they're not in time order. So I finished Another Brooklyn by Jacqueline Woodson. This one is a coming-of-age story about some girls growing up in Brooklyn. They are not white, and they're in different financial classes or economic classes in Brooklyn. So even though they're all not white, they're not all necessarily considered to be of the same class according to their parents. So there's some division within their little friend group as they're growing up. And so it's a really interesting look at non-white society in the 70s. So this is, moving forward a little bit from the nonfiction Kurlansky book, but still kind of the same society, a lot of the same issues as they are growing up as girls in the city, in lower socioeconomic society, but not all of them are quite situated in lower economic New York City. So it was really interesting. And one that I'd talked about in my previous update, but I didn't have the book to show you because I lost it, and I finally found it again. Another Brooklyn story is Motherless Brooklyn. Jonathan Lethem, and it is on book lists. Oh, I don't remember what it's been shortlisted for. But it was shortlisted in awards. It won the National Book Critics Circle Award. That's what's on the front here. But that's not the only award that it was listed for. This one is about a guy with Tourette's who is also in Brooklyn, but he is a gangster. And he's in that, the underworld of Brooklyn society that actually does dovetail nicely with Jacqueline Woodson's Brooklyn. So it's kind of the seamier side of Brooklyn that these girls are not supposed to be a part of. They'd better not. But they go well together. But one is BIPOC representation and the other is disability representation. But same city, offset a little bit in time. Motherless Brooklyn is, I think, set a little bit closer to present day than Another Brooklyn is. But they're both definitely the past for younger readers today, and not as far apart from each other in time as I would think they are, if you're someone who's been born after both these books are set. So if you want a theme, this is actually a pretty fun theme combination. And then the other book that I don't know what I did as far as logging it, but it is not logged on Storygraph in the right order. This one I finished like a couple days ago, so it should have been at the top of this video, but it's not. So we'll have to look. This is Murder on the Yellow Brick Road by Stuart Kaminsky. This, I think, is the first book in a series. So a crime series from, I'm thinking, the 70s. The book is set in 1940. 1977. I've gotten to where I can look at the cover and be like, I'll bet that's a 70s cover. So, 1977. This is set in 1940. So we're just a couple years later than the Taiwan Travelogue book in this one. But this is set in Hollywood in 1940. So we're in World War II era Hollywood crime novel in which several of the actors from the Munchkins in the Wizard of Oz movie, they're still around. They're still available in case people want to take pictures in the set that's only partially been broken down from the Wizard of Oz because they don't know if they're going to do a sequel. And so they're still around so they can get in costume and take pictures with tourists. But that's really all they're hanging around for at the moment. And a fight's broken out between some of them, and one of them has been found dead with a knife in his back on the Yellow Brick Road. So it's a great imagery. And our private detective has been called in to try and solve this case without bringing scandal down on the studio. And so he has to investigate by talking to Clark Gable. And Judy Garland, I think, is the actress that calls him in. So there's a lot of name dropping, and it's kind of fun. I will be looking for the rest of the books in this series. I probably own several, because I know I got several Kaminsky books. This one I got during the Bag of Books sale, where I also got that Brood book that I talked about in part 1 of this video set. This one I liked a lot more than Brood. It's still not a 5-star. It's a fun crime novel. It is very much a dated style. So if you only read modern crime novels, you might find this a little bit dry, and the pacing's a little different. It's compared to Raymond Chandler and Dashiell Hammett. If you like that style of kind of classic crime novel storytelling, you'll probably like Kaminsky pretty well. But I really liked the Charles Paris series by the author who wrote the Charles Paris series. Oh my gosh. Anyway, that's also about an actor and in BBC acting world. Now I'm going to have to remember who wrote the Charles Paris series. Anyway, one more book on my stack. The only poetry book I finished during this leg of reading, Watching for Signs by Joan Schultz. I did not vibe with this poetry. It's a lot more list-oriented instead of being a narrative where it's like sentences or semi-sentence structure. This is just lists, vertical lists of words and images, and just... I could see how it could be useful as inspiration for making art. Back when I was in art school, I might have vibed with it a little bit more, but not as something just to sit down and read. It would be more like pick a page at random and make some artwork inspired by that page. I could see that. But it's not something that I got much out of trying to read it. So, anyway, let me pause and see if I can find. All right. So I paused. Seriously. All right. So I paused, I looked it up. The Charles Paris series is by Simon Brett. I was thinking Simon, I just couldn't remember the rest of the name. Simon Brett. He's an author that's more recent. He's still publishing books because I just read a new arc of his a couple months ago. But his Charles Paris series, I'm pretty sure, is finished up. The sleuth, Charles Paris, was getting pretty old, and there wasn't much else you could do with him without it just being sad. But that was set in the BBC, and Charles Paris was like a B-list actor. So the Kaminsky books, if they're based around the same characters as the Murder on the Yellow Brick Road book, the main character is a detective. He's just a private detective, but in the world of Hollywood. So similar, just slightly different era. I think Simon Brett started writing in the 80s, maybe the early 70s, but similar enough in timeline. So anyway, and there we go. We got a cat. We did. Woo! Hi, dude. All right, that is Chesper Womcat. So we did get a cat sighting in this video. And Chesper and his brother are probably coming with me. They still need to be fixed. And I need to get them fixed somewhere where I can get their stumps finished off at the same time. Because those two are my tripod kitties. And they were born in such a way that they both lost feet at birth. And having poked around at other people's experiences with kittens like this, it's not exactly uncommon. They have to wait until they're old enough to be able to go through anesthesia safely before you can finish off the stump. So you just keep them stable, and they don't notice that there's anything wrong. They're just more prone to infection if they don't get their stumps finished off more cleanly. So that will be part of when they get fixed, hopefully. So that'll be something after I get after I get moved to the new location. That'll be the next order of business, is to get the kitties fixed. And then there'll be some of the mascots for Ravenmount, the bookstore and craft store. So the faces of the new bookstore. There you go. He's so cute. And his brother is a little bit more pointy-nosed. He's around somewhere. They're all around somewhere. It's getting close to dinner time. So yeah. All right. So I'm going to grab another stack of books and show you what I'm currently reading. And then I'll wrap this up so that the kitties can have dinner. Very, very important. They're all starving. I'm actually cooking some beef for my dinner. And so they're particularly annoyed because it should be dinner time and I'm not giving them my beef. So let me get this stack of books. I'll be right back. Okay. This looks more like the typical Jamie video. I know. Stack of books on the lap. So these are the books that I'm currently reading that I would like to finish some of by the end of the month. Some of these I will try to be wrapping up tonight. So there will still be a stack of books at the end of the month that I have not shown in previous videos as finished. And these hopefully will be some of them. So I have the Last Days of Dogtown by Anita Diamant, about a town that's not quite a ghost town, but everybody's been leaving, and so these are some of the last people to leave. I have Born in the Big Rains by Fadumo Korn. This one is a memoir of Somalia. And I started it on one of the days of the Bag of Books sale. And, because I needed a book to read while I was manning the tables. So, it started. It hasn't been read very far because I was busy. I have Sea Road by Ursula K. Le Guin. This is a reread because I didn't really remember anything after I read it the first time, because I was reading it during TAR and I was also doing other things and it was not sticking. Being Ursula K. Le Guin, I felt like I should remember a little bit more. Now that I'm rereading, I'm about a third of the way in, and maybe it's just that it's not her genre, because it's not sci-fi fantasy. It's just, there's not much for me to grab onto in this book so far. I'm not that interested. So it may not have been really me. It may just be the book, but I'm giving it a shot. So I might finish this tonight and just be done with it either way. And she's a good writer, obviously, but I think she maybe is not the literary writer that she's trying to be in this book. It needs to have more plot that it doesn't have. So far, anyway. Michael Cunningham, this is a library book, Day. So I haven't really started it properly yet, but I really do want to turn in all my library books and start fresh soon. I need to get this done. We were just talking about Michael Cunningham's books on Sprint's chat earlier this week. This is the one I'd like to finish first. I do have several more books by him, so I will be reading more. And I don't know much about it, actually. I saw it and was like, oh, I've read more books by him, and I liked him. This one's also set in Brooklyn, so it fits with that theme. But this is set in 2019 in Brooklyn. So I really should read this soon, because it fits that theme that I seem to be doing of books set in Brooklyn. Have I ever been to Brooklyn? No. And I'm not sure it's on my list very highly for places to visit, but I'm kind of visiting through all these books. The Book of Records by Madeline Thien, or Thien. This one's another library book I'd like to be done with, that people have talked about a lot on especially awards predictions. So it's highly acclaimed by booktubers. So I would like to get to it, and I'd love to clear my library books to start fresh. 2 books by Abdulrazak Gurna, also from the library, Gravel Heart and Paradise. Paradise is one that's that won the Nobel Prize in Literature. So obviously I need to read it. And the Gurna books are both pretty short. I might tackle them tonight too if I have time. And then I have Tom's Crossing by Daniel Uski. Yeah. So the Tom's Crossing, which is very fat. I'll put these down so they don't fall over. Be right back. Okay, we're back. And now I'm not going to knock all the books off by trying to stack them weirdly. I still need to finish The Correspondent by Virginia Evans, which was on the long list for the Women's Prize for Fiction. I own it. I should finish it. I've barely started it, but I'd like to finish it this weekend, for sure. I randomly was like, I was boxing up books. Any of you guys that do much with reorganizing your shelves and all, you know what it's like when you're trying to move books around and not get sucked in by them. I read the first page of this one. I was like, oh, that sounds pretty good, actually. And then I read the second page and the third page. And then I was like, well, I guess I'm reading this book. The title itself, I'm not sure would have drawn me in. I don't know what appealed to me about it when I picked it out. But I got it some time ago. It was being rejected, having been at the bookstore for too long, I think. Yeah, it had been in the bookstore for too long. It's called So Far From God by Ana Castillo. It is set in a small, outwardly sleepy hamlet in central New Mexico. And it's two decades of life in a Chicana family in this little hamlet. So just a slice of life kind of, family story. So I don't know what appealed to me about it, but I enjoyed the pages I've read so far. So I'm going to probably finish it this weekend while it's appealing to me. This is one that I've been trying to finish for a while. Like, it's showed up in so many TBR videos ever since I started BookTube, it feels like. And I'm still not very far into it. I'm going to finish this book. I might just set it as a book that I read it during a sprint and just push through and finish the stupid book. Because it's not even that long, but it's classic crime fiction. It's by Michael Innes. It's called Hamlet Revenge. It's written with a very literary style. It's very proper English and very slow and pedantic and frankly boring. So it's been a while since I read something that's that classic. I did read the book by Michael Innes. That's usually what people have heard of. Are they going to list it on the back? Of course not. Anyway, there's one in the Professor's Lounge or something like that. Or Death in the Professor's House. Something like that. Death at the President's Lodgings. That's what it is. It's the president of the university. And there's a dead body at his lodgings. Anyway, so I've read one by him, and I remember it was also pretty pedantic. But I'm just struggling to get through this one. So I'm going to finish it, and then I'm going to be done with it, because it's ridiculous how long it's taken me to finish it. And then one that I've been enjoying, and I'm almost halfway through, is a short one called Woodworm by Layla Martinez that my other sister sent me down to read. I'm enjoying it. It's kind of literary horror with ghosts or some sort of haunting so far. It's not really gotten very horror-y. It's mostly just a haunted house right now. So I'm hoping it picks up, because right now it's just kind of creepy vibes. It's good, but nothing's really happening. But I know for this style of horror, sometimes it takes a while, and then all of a sudden it, sucker punches you out of nowhere. So that may be the structure of this one. And then the one I've been reading most dedicatedly, like the bookmark's actually past the 2/3 mark at this point, is The Maker of Swans by Peric O'Donnell. That I started for St. Paddy's Day because of the author, Peric O'Donnell. And I'm really enjoying this one. It's magical realism-ish, but it's not as magical as I want it to be, which is why I'm not done with it. It was getting good, and then it kind of tapered off. And maybe it's going to be a similar structure to the Layla Martinez book, where everything comes together and then it's really cool. It does give me Pan's Labyrinth vibes. And it's, children that are caught up in something they don't understand that's kind of creepy. So I'm hoping that plays out, because Pan's Labyrinth, if you've seen that movie, it's incredible. So it's at least got good vibes. I'm just waiting for something to happen again. Because something has happened, but then it kind of stopped. And yeah. So anyway, so that's what I'm working on. I also have one book of poetry this is one that I actually like. And that might stick around for me, because I could see making art inspired by some of the poems, and it's lovely writing. It's not just one poet. This is the Contemporary Kazakh Literature Poetry Edition. The Kazakh government, in conjunction with the UN, published several anthologies of Kazakh literature. And this is the poetry volume. And it's just a lovely book. I got this as one of my 6 hours. So one of the books I got in exchange for volunteering for 6 hours when I was at the bookstore still. And I don't normally use those on poetry. I think this is the only poetry book I got like that. But it was just such a cool book, and nobody else was excited about it. Like, out of the whole poetry section, this book is so cool. And I kept putting it on display. Surely if I just make it more visible, someone will snap it up. Nope. So now it's mine. And it's really good. And I like some of the imagery. I think the landscape in Kazakhstan is very similar to the part of Colorado I'm in. So a lot of the space oriented descriptions in these poems are very much the sort of poetry that you could write about some of the areas that I grew up in and know about and enjoy here. So so I'm enjoying that. And so I think people in parts of Australia might also vibe with some of the the space descriptions in here. Because it's a landscape that I think people in my part of the U.S. West and people in this part of Asia and people in Australia are familiar with, that not everybody is so used to otherwise. So anyway, I'm really enjoying it. I'm only about a quarter of the way through this book. It is kind of fat, and compared to your typical poetry book, this one, without all of the about the poet's information, it's still a really long one. It is 608 pages of poetry. So it'll be a while before I'm done with it. But of all the poetry books that I currently own, this one's going to probably be mine. The rest of them will probably end up in my bookstore and available for other people that like poetry more than I do. But this one, unless I get another volume of this donated, it is mine. At least until I get tired of it. It'll probably eventually go in my store for other people, but I'm not done with it yet. So anyway, that's what I'm reading right now. I have a lot of other arcs to read. I am still working on reading the arcs that people gave me numbers for. If you want to duplicate this game, it was kind of fun. I have a lot of pages of arcs. Like when you look in the list of all the arcs you have to read and give feedback on, I have 33 pages of those. So I had people on the chats. I was participating in 2 different sprint chats that evening. So in both of them, I had people give me a number from 1 to 33. And then for each of those numbers, I looked at the page of arcs and picked one. So I read We Would Have Told Each Other Everything by Judith Herman. That was page 28. Next up, I'm reading The Traitor by Kobo Abe from page 18. That's translated from the Japanese. I've read other books by Kobo Abe, I think 2 so far. So I already know I like his writing, and I am enjoying it so far. It's historical fiction set around a story about a pirate ship that maybe they're not actually pirates. They might just be conscripted sailors that take over the ship and land the ship and go off and start a village of their own, and nobody knows what happened to them after that, and trying to figure out what happened and how much of the story is apocryphal. And so it's a very nerdy historical fiction, Japanese historical fiction in translation. And it is an arc. I don't know how many English editions of this book already exist. That's something I should look up before I'm writing the review on it. But this is a new edition of this book that's coming out. So anyway, really good. And then the one after that I'll be reading, and that I might get to by the end of this month, is Revenge of Odessa by Frederick Forsyth. I've read several books by him as well, and I'm guessing this is a new edition, because I could have sworn Frederick Forsyth is dead. So this must just be a new edition of his book. But I may be wrong. He'd be very old if he's still around. But he does a lot of Cold War era thrillers. And this is another one of those. But with all this stuff going on in the Ukraine war that I'm once again following more closely, and Ukraine is pushing back really nicely in the war at the moment. So it's a good time to read a book set in Odessa, which is the port city that Russia would love to take, that would complete their control of the coastline and the south of Ukraine. But they don't have Odessa, and it looks like they may not hold as much of the coastline as they have captured as they had controlled. So things are looking interesting in that war. Anyway, so Revenge of Odessa, which is, I think, set in Cold War or maybe World War II into the Cold War, but we'll find out. And then I've got a whole bunch more that are lined up for after that. One from page 13. I had 13 given to me three times, so I had to pick 3 different books from page 13. And then one from page 30, Arborescence by Rhett Davis. I think that's the author. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. So I've got a whole bunch of arcs listed here. I won't read them off to you because there's a lot of them. But I will be reading more arcs, trying to read them in the order that the numbers were given to me, instead of picking based on my mood. I did pick within each page based on what looked interesting. So there's a bit of mood reading built into this structure. And it made a great way to semi-randomize my selection of what arcs to read next, while still not just prioritizing the old ones or the new ones. So it's a really nice mix of ones I've had forever and ones I've gotten more recently, including some. I got one from page 2, one from page 3, one from page 5, and page 6. So those are getting into more ones I've gotten more recently. So it's a nice mix. I liked this game. If you have a lot of arcs, or if you have, a list of your TBR books that you're trying to get through, I would recommend trying this scheme for picking what to read next, and get your friends to help you make the selection easier. So anyway, that'll be what I'm reading, what I'll be talking about in the next updates, and I will wrap up March and probably talk about April in the next wrap-up video. I don't anticipate doing any more videos between now and then. It depends, though, on if I have any news or other stuff to talk about. And I am thinking about trying to do some short videos that are just 1 or 2 books at a time. That may not just be what I've read super recently, but like tying themes together. So, like the book set in Brooklyn might be a video, and things like that. Or books that center around food a lot. I had that theme this month. So that may be something that I'll work up, and those will be shorter videos, like under 20 minutes. And just whenever I feel like it, I'll make a new one, and try and put them all together in a playlist and make it a little more organized for you guys. Trying to spin up some things that I can keep going, that are sustainable, and that can feature things that introduce my audience on here to themes of books that are available in my bookstore once I get my bookstore open. So watch for those, and single book reviews and vlogs and stuff. And I've got a special project that I'm working on that is part of why I'm learning some skills for video editing that I don't already have, but I might master in time. So there's a new video coming out shortly that'll be distinctly different, that we'll see how it goes. Hopefully as different as I want it to be. It might be closer to what I normally do, just for lack of technical know-how, but we'll find out. And I will catch you guys in the next video or in reading chats somewhere. Happy reading, everyone. Let me know if you have any comments on the books that I've been reading in this video or in the part 1 of this pair of videos. And I will talk to you guys soon. Bye!